Welcome to The Virus, Part 3. As the doorway slid open, he stopped dead in his tracks. Where the fighters had landed, there was no sign of them, just a massive, vibrating dark mass of gelatinous stuff. From where he stood, the nose and a couple of wingtips were the only visible sign that the machines were still there. He yelled for his team members, but nothing. A robot walked past him carrying testing equipment, and it seemed totally oblivious to anything in its surroundings. He grabbed it by the shoulders, and it stopped dead and slowly turned its head towards him. "What happened here?" The robot simply said they had completed the repairs, and they could leave. Then, as his hands left its shoulders, it simply walked on. There was no panic in the commander, for while still part human, many of the normal emotions had been replaced with the circuitry which made them such good fighters. However, now, as he visually zoomed in to the scene in front of him, he was aware of danger, and his mind was projecting the different scenarios and the best options to overcome the problem. While his craft was slightly to the side, and as he walked around, at a safe distance, the now throbbing thing, which his X-ray visual attachment told him was feeding on his team members, hence he surmised the throbbing. His craft had not totally been engulfed. While he could take a chance and leave in it, rendezvous with the waiting ship at the coordinates, he was also aware that this may inadvertently carry the spawn with him. Funny. That word came to mind. Spawn. Hurrying over to the schematics plan on the far wall, he was looking to see if there were any life pods for emergency exit from the station. Even though now all the crew were robots, there may still be an emergency pod or two left in place from when humanoids worked here. He was in luck. That then would be his method of leaving. Programming in the coordinates and blasting out, he could report everything to his superiors when he was picked up. Then it would be their problem, and he could get back to work. Memorizing the route to get to the nearest emergency life pods, the commander never even looked back. It was pointless. He would confirm with the flight deck that he was launching the pod when he had got it ready. That way, nothing, he hoped, would prevent him from leaving. The emergency life pods were in a section of the station which looked as if it had never been visited by any. The lighting was simple standby mode, allowing him to visibly see ahead through an almost twilight zone. It wouldn't have mattered really, as he was equipped via his implant to change to night vision if necessary. Every deck had 4 sets of emergency pods, so he didn't have too far to go, just a couple of miles. But although there was robotic vehicles available, he had decided against that. No need to let everything or anyone know his intention. In his theoretical brain, he had already surmised that this gelatinous stuff was alive, and if it had tapped into the mainframe of the station, there was no telling what information it might have already got. He had, however, noted that in this section there were no signs of it anywhere. Ahead now was the sign for the emergency life pods. Entering the room through the open doorway, he noted there were 100 numbered pods. He aimed for the one directly ahead of him and manually opened the airlock door with little trouble, then slid himself in and closed the hatch tightly. Then he flicked on the equipment, and it immediately came to life with a hum, and lights flashed all over the console as he started the pre-checks. The onboard radio communications crackled, and he was asked to identify himself and plot coordinates so the onboard emergency tracker could be activated. He had hoped to get free of the station before that was needed, but automatically gave the coordinates of the pickup point, and then, without giving the flight deck the chance to abort his leaving, he pressed the eject button, and he felt the sudden movement as the pod launched far out into space. Now he could look around him, as he could do nothing more than wait. Comfortable that all was as it should be, he simply turned himself off, pre-programming himself to become conscious again at the sound of an incoming message over the onboard audio communications, which would happen when he was found and hailed by the waiting ship. He had now added an audio to the emergency beacon channel, confirming who he was and that he had arrived in this form because of an unknown creature having infected his ship, and that the others had ceased to be operational because of it, ending the looped message with the fact he would explain more when picked up. Basically, in sleep mode, the humanoid or sentient part of him would keep operating, thus his blood flow and organs, which had not been computerized, would keep functioning through his thoughts. His brain, as with any of his original species, had the ability to go into a state of deep meditation and, to all intents and purposes, turn off from any stimulus except that which he designated as a trigger to bring him back. This was the beauty of the cybernetic organism, devoid of any senses which were of no use to the soldier, with the speed, strength and flexibility more than 10 times that of the full humanoid from anywhere in the universe. He could operate without consciousness, fear or compassion. The perfect soldier. He took orders without question, and with nanotechnology incorporated into the brainstem, he could download everything he saw directly into a mainframe. As he became still, the mark that he had had on his glove started to move. If he had removed his glove, he would have seen that it had seeped through and was already growing on his flesh, and the tendrils had already gone below the surface, feeding quietly on his physical skin and blood supply. He was infected. Now he would be the carrier of this now growing part of the original, yes, its spawn, to move across the universe on this new food source, to become another powerful being like the original, but with all the memories of the original plus any new that it made. As he rested, oblivious to its existence with him, in him, it was also sending tendrils to open his memories and knowledge, to aid it and to add to its own. It too was now learning, and was content with this new host, unaware at present that where it was going, it may not be welcomed, indeed, that it may be captured and fed and studied, then manipulated to the will of the old empire. Why not come back again to get the conclusion of this short story?